Alright guys, we are back. We got all the parts out for the YZE motor frame in the manual. Double check all your parts. Make sure you've got everything laid out. And the frame includes a little bit of wiring. So in the frame build, we're going to be doing some limit switch work. And oftentimes, I'll just show you real quick. You can hide the wires down in here behind the motors, but that is really difficult. Well, it's not really that difficult. You just got to make sure you're doing it correctly. And if there's a part that is having an issue, like a limit switch, and the wires are all ran, it's kind of a difficult challenge to remove. So instead of going that route, we are going to run all the wiring in front of the motors, and later on I'll show you how to just pull the motors off, hide the wiring, put the motors back in place, and it only takes like 10-15 minutes to do once you know everything's set up perfect. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue with the YZE motor plates. First step, we're going to work on your limit switch. We've already drilled the 2 holes out. Get out your limit switch. It's another one of those situations where you may or may not have to remove the DuPont connector. It's called the DuPont connector. You can lift it with a knife, or a needle is probably the easiest. Just stick it in, grab that tiny little lever. There's 4 little levers in there. Just barely catch it with something sharp like a knife or a needle. Once it's lifted, then you can pull the wire. If you pull the wire and then try to lift, it creates a problem. So, got this guy off there. Bend these limit switch wires, just barely. You only need like a couple degrees, maybe like 15-degree bend right in the middle of the metal. Don't do it too far forward. You only want to catch the back, like right here. Just barely bend it a couple degrees, and should make it easier to go through this guy. It's not that difficult if you get it right to send these through, and we may modify this in the future where you don't have to mess with all this. I think you can set this limit switch in there either way, but this won't work. You definitely want to do it so that the wires don't twist like that. So we're going to pull these out and swap them. Shouldn't take but a second. So we're going to go blue on the outside end, green on the next. Shouldn't matter which way. As long as the limit switch goes in straight, the wires go in straight, you should be able to just press that switch down in there, kind of help guide the wires. And that should be good, as long as it's pretty flat. Then, again, maybe just give these a slight bend back. You don't want to bend them back and forth too much. Send them back into the DuPont connector. And there they are. Make sure they click in. There's no metal sticking out. Limit switch is done. Set it aside for the time being. Then we're going to go ahead and start on the back vertical frame piece. We're going to take M5 bolts, washers, 1 washer, and T-nut. We're going to set, let's see, I think we're going to set it up like this. I'm going to consider this the bottom, so when this thing is assembled, it's going to kind of go something just to orient everybody. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pretty much assemble it like this in this position. So this may look a little bit complicated. The flat side, you have 3 of these guys. There'll be nubs on 3 of them, and 1 without nubs on either side. You don't want the one without nubs. You want the 3 of them with nubs. So start with M5 by 10. Send it through the side without nubs, the flat side. Then put your M5 T-nut in there and slide it into the bottom. Something like that. Put this very close to the bottom. It's pretty darn close. We're gonna adjust this later, but it should kind of just sit like that. Maybe 2 millimeters at the bottom is how much room is left. Do that same thing again. Another M5 by 10, a T-nut, oh, I'm sorry, a flat 90-degree brace through to the T-nut. Set it up in through the bottom of the frame. Tighten this down. Leave about 2 millimeters. It should be pretty darn close to the same distance here. Should be pretty flush because this is going to go right here. Next, same exact thing. Alright guys, we're back. As I was saying, this piece here is going to go here. So let's go ahead and just assemble it. We're going to take M5 by 10 up through the brace, T-nut, M5 by 10 with a washer. Don't forget that washer on both of them. Through the brace, T-nut. So we've got a washer on each of these corners. Alright. This guy, it doesn't matter how we slide it in as long as it goes into the bottom slot. That's what's most important. Maybe if it's gonna go. Just thinking about it. I think this guy must be a little bit on the tight side back here. Just barely loosen that. Okay, that should be easier. All right. So I'm going to put it over here, and I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go, but I do know it should be roughly about like that. And these shouldn't be tightened, but just kind of snug up a tiny bit, so you can still kind of move it around a little. All right. Next is your YZE motor plate, and it should go about right here. In order to secure that, we're going to see if this is a good position for it. Yeah, right there's good. So we're going to use some bolts that go down through these three. These are M5 by 10s with washers on these three. So washer on each of these. Next we're going to add the T-nuts to the back. One T-nut there. One T-nut here. There's a few different ways to do this. I'm not sure what the manual indicates, but this is the way I've done it recently. I start by sending this first one through back here, and then I sneak a guy in here, and then I send this guy through, and then the fourth one through. I'm just kind of feeling it. I should, I think I missed that one. Nope, I missed two of them. Okay, don't do it that way. Ignore what I just did. The reason why I've done that in the past is because this guy goes here, so the flat side of this 90 brace goes there. And generally you would put this through here without a washer. You cannot use a washer there. And then you would maybe just do one full turn on that. And that could also work. See if it'll go. A little harder to get this just right. I don't know why this piece is such a challenge. This guy is extremely difficult usually. Except for this time it's going to be super easy. Haha! This guy and this guy. So I've sent all four of these T-nuts through, and it should line up something like this. Now, this corner should just barely be kind of sticking out a little bit. It's not super important, its exact position, but something like that. And you can kind of, wouldn't over tighten these down, but you can kind of give them a little tightness so everything kind of holds in place. We may have to loosen these up again when we put the motors in. We'll see. All right, laying this flat again, we are going to drop a T-nut down into this. This T-nut is going to need a washer. The reason this one didn't is because we got not only the brace, but we also got the plate. But in this instance, all we got is the brace. So line that T-nut up under there and thread right into it. Should be good. At this point, as long as this hole and this T-nut and this rail are all lined up, you should be good. And you got a tiny bit sticking out here. You should be good to tighten everything up with these rails, except for the motor plate. You don't want to tighten this quite yet. So your next step, well, it's something you can do real quick. Might as well. This Y limit switch plate is 4 millimeters thick, so you do not need a washer. You can just put the bolt through, thread the T-nut, slide it in, and just kind of loosely put it in about the right spot. Should be good. Okay, at this point you want to make sure that the bottom here is flush. You don't have any, you should have enough looseness that you can kind of adjust the right angle, perpendicularity of these two pieces. You may want to get an actual 90-degree brace to test that out. And it's going to be done by a series of adjustments to like 3 or 4 bolts. This guy here, you're going to want to make sure that this guy is flush here and here. Same with these guys. So you may have to tighten this just enough to loosen this one, just to retighten it, so that if it has tension on it, you loosen that tension, and then finish tightening these back. It's kind of a complex system of loosening and tightening, but in the end, you're just trying to get all the brackets flush with the T slots, and you're also trying to make sure that this frame here is flush, and right now you can see there's a tiny little gap in there. So in order to get that out, I would want to loosen this. Yeah, I got it. Make sure this is tight, and then retighten this. So make sure there's no little gaps showing up the best that you can. It's not going to be flawless, but you should be pretty good on it. And that's that. The next thing we're going to do is install motors. Typically, I would install these with this guy facing this way. This guy, and by the way, this is the front of the machine. This is left, this is right, this is top, back is away. This guy would be facing left as well, and the extruder would be facing right. That's typically how I would do it, and I would hide the wires from the carriage. This entire wiring harness right here would all be opened. So you've got this massive harness of wire. This would all run down back here behind all this. You would also have an extra wire for the X motor the X motor on the gantry, that would also get included. Something like that. These would all come to one spot, like down here. Instead of doing that, which you can go ahead and bolt these in place just as they're shown with all these wires. I would attempt to put everything except for the X motor. I would put all these up top in the top slot, and then the X motor wires, I'd put those in the bottom with this guy and tie in with this and then this one. So you want to install this motor with the wires coming out of it, and then this one last. But instead, we're going to flip all these motors so that they just face out. And then we can go back in later and adjust it once we've tested the system and make sure that it works. So, instead of doing all that right now, we'll do that later. Okay. The final bit of this is simply putting M3x8s to hold the motors in place. Probably don't need them all, but I included them all. Might as well throw them all in. And in the future, I may have some type of a device that kind of shields right here, so that this becomes an additional piece of the frame, or that way all the wiring harnesses all ran through here. It'll be easier to access, making, you know, removal of components a heck of a lot easier. I haven't fully decided on that yet, but we've been busy building. Weston's been busy building. All right. This looks like I'm missing a few of these guys. That's not got enough of them out. All right. There we go. Did not want to grab. Yeah. I guess I must have forgotten 2 or 4. I don't believe those had any other purpose. Yeah. Okay. I'll go ahead and throw in the last 4. It's always good to double check your counts, of course, before. I have to check my manual, make sure that count was correct. Should have been 12. I used anything else. Huh. Yeah. Manual's correct. 12 and 3x8s. But I only got 8. Alright. The very last few little things are going to be attaching, like the lead screw. You're going to attach the pulley motor for the belt on the y-axis. If you guys are kind of seeing what I'm doing. That one's kind of tight. Hopefully I'm not opening up the threading too bad on that one. Yeah, they look pretty good. Well, it looks like they came out pretty clean overall. There we go. Yeah, so you got this guy, timing belt, flat side of the pulley. I'm trying to make sure that one of these set screws actually hits the flat side of the pulley. I think it'll be a little more guaranteed. These may have to be adjusted down the road. You're also going to install the Z coupling. Oh, wife loves that word. The coupling. Where is the coupling? You have a 5mm side and you have an 8mm side. 5mm goes onto the 5mm motor shaft. It's Double check that that's on a flat side. The other one just kind of puts in place. Same with this guy. This is the lead screw. As far as how far down does this lead screw actually go? Do I set it on the motor shaft itself? You know, because that's sitting on the motor shaft. I don't really know. Your guess is as good as mine. To a degree, I would almost say give a little bit of room of separation, but I wouldn't separate them too far. That's that. If you have a rubber band left, it's probably a good idea to just to secure it so it's not all over the place. That is the the YZE motor frame plate assembly thing. Next we're going to tackle the extruder. That should be a pretty fast, simple build too. And you're going to need some plates and a few pieces, and we'll show you that in a few seconds. Thanks, guys.